one of the trends that we're seeing in response to the coronavirus pandemic all over the world is that so many parts of our lives, as Alondra pointed out, are becoming digitized in ways that we probably couldn't have expected even just 3 or 4 months ago. Technology, of course, is key to making all of that possible. But as you and Alondra have both talked about, that with these kinds of shifts towards technology, there are both threats and opportunities. There are both ways in which they can have positive and negative impacts on our lives. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, as companies and governments shift towards digitizing so many things in society these days, what are some of the positive and negative impacts that might emerge?
Absolutely, absolutely, and thank you very much. And it was such a pleasure being in the company of such a wonderful crowd here. You're very right. In fact, before COVID-19, there was a huge debate about the fourth industrial revolution and how businesses will start automating work and what's going to happen with the impact of technology in everyday life. And what we've seen with the pandemic is an acceleration of many of the potential impacts that automation and digitalization may have on work, and very much, things like massive unemployment, for instance, right? So what we've seen in a matter of 3 months is something that we expected was going to fold out in a more controlled way over the next 3 to 5 years.
Alondra, I'm asking you, are you afraid that the sacrifices we all did might take a more permanent form? It's something that all of us are wondering. How much freedom are we ready to give up to feel more secure, for example? Are we heading towards a crisis of our civil liberties, etc.?
In the United States, we're having we've seen the sort of proliferation of part-time work, and part of the crisis that we're facing is that part-time workers don't have health care benefits, they don't have sick leave, and so you create an incentive structure that puts society at risk when you've got a pandemic or an epidemic. So I think I think that he's has a true description of empirically what is happening and what will happen. But back to the social compact question, we really need to think about what are the implications for the well-being of society as a whole for something like that happening?
In order to get utility out of the data, in order to be able to innovate, find solutions, to big problems of society, you need to have access to the data. But when you have access to the data, especially when you aggregate data, when you break down those barriers, as Alondra said, you have all kinds of issues happening, okay? And so I might perhaps offer a way out of this conundrum. Right? And this way is something that's been discussed, admittedly in technocratic circles. But it's the fundamental idea of breaking through this conundrum, right, is to separate the collection of data from the use of data.
Populism and populist rhetoric have gained ground across North and South America, Europe, and of course Asia. At the same time, authoritarian behavior has strengthened its presence and status, threatening democracy. So the question is, how can we ensure that the rule of law, fundamental rights and liberties will not be another victim of the pandemic, and how can technology support democracy in these challenging conditions?
We need to re-engage with the political process, and currently most people do not engage with the political process, right? Currently, what most of us do is they consider politics as a show, as entertainment, right? We sit, we watch, we get angry, we throw stones, petrol bombs, or we swear at things, but we don't take the responsibility of actually engaging with the political process because we're not perhaps given the opportunity, or perhaps we don't think it's worthwhile. So if we want to save democracy, I think we need to re-engage with politics. And we need to find perhaps new ways, new institutions, where citizens have some kind of direct say in the policy-making life cycle. So we don't just go there and vote every 4 years or every 2 years, but we do have a say in how policy is formed and take the responsibility as well. We need to be responsible. Just having an opinion is not responsibility.
Is COVID a massive step forward for the surveillance state and the surveillance private sector? And what ensures that governments won't make the apps mandatory? What could stop them from keeping it that way?
Thank you for that question. I think that the contact tracing situation that's happening right now, the sort of debates and controversies over it, really is the case study to think about our first question about the social compact, because you've got public-private partnerships. In some instances, you've got only private sector working on this. You have national health services trying to build apps, and then you've got nation states, the states involved in this as well. I think what we're seeing with COVID in particular is how nuanced what we sometimes call the digital divide is, or how actually variegated and complicated it is. And so we've often, I think, talked about it as just whether or not people have internet access or don't have internet access. But we're learning in this moment that it's really about, bandwidth. Do you have enough bandwidth to work from home on Zoom all day? And how do we think about that? And that really, I think, brings questions around net neutrality and the cost of bandwidth, I think, to the forefront of conversations in a new and different way. I think we're really coming face to face with the fact that a lot of, particularly working class folks connect to the internet on smartphones, which is a terrific thing. I mean, one of the kind of fabulous things about early technology and smartphone technology, or it's just cell phone technology, was the ability to kind of leapfrog infrastructure. So to not have to put up phone lines and these sorts of things to create a communicative infrastructure was a quite extraordinary thing. But I think that we see, there are things that people can't access through smartphones and the like. And as we're talking, back to the conversation about contact tracing apps and exposure notification, if one is, someone who can't really afford, that uses their cell phone and they pay for it, moment to moment and buy hours, and then the hours run down. If it's a kind of economic taxing thing for you or your family, it really sort of puts in jeopardy any kind of public health work that one wants to do that is relying upon smartphones. So it's not just the physical having of the smartphones, it's the affording, to have them on all the time. So at any moment when you're out in the world, your Bluetooth is pinging. I mean, if you have to turn your phone off, or if you lose service because you didn't pay your bill or couldn't afford it, it puts all of that at risk. And so I think that what it's leading to, what we don't have in the United States, and I know other societies are much better at this, is a democratic investment in technological infrastructure as a tool of citizenship.
Technology is a human product. Okay, it doesn't come from nowhere. Okay, it is we human beings that create technology, right? And technology is based on human design, and human design has a purpose, and human design is based on values. Okay, so if your values are, for example, that the best thing you can do is maximize profit, okay, economic advancement, then all your technology will be built in order to achieve those ends, those goals. Okay. So one thing we need to do really is try to sort of rethink what are the values that drive technology, that drive designs. Okay. Can we rethink those values? I believe that we live in an era, right? And I don't know when this started. It might have started, the past 10 or 20 years, where we are moving further and further away from reality as a society. Okay. I don't know why this happened. Maybe it's the movies. Maybe it's, we're moving away from reality. We talk as if we are in the scientific or technological era. I would doubt that we live in the scientific era. We live in a very sort of subjective, relativistic, my opinion, your opinion. I believe that, the earth is flat, you believe the earth is round, you believe the earth is pitch-like, we all agree to disagree and we all right. We can't be all right, I'm sorry, okay? So I think we are in a cultural milieu, if you like, that, amplifies the imaginary, amplifies the subjective, amplifies the unreal, okay? And if we cannot extract ourselves from that mindset, then technology will help us get deeper into that hole, will create more unreality around us.